Well, thank you ever so much for inviting me tonight. It's a real pleasure to be there and be here and meet you. So I am from Natural England, which is an arm's length body of the government. So think of us as a bit sort of in the same sort of genre as the Environment Agency. But our role in Natural England, our purpose is to conserve, enhance, and manage the natural environment for the benefit of present and future generations. And our vision is that that means that it's thriving nature for people and planet. And my particular role is in the health and environment team. So we're around connecting people with nature for their physical and mental well-being. And I cover the southeast of England, so definitely not London, but the home counties, if you like. So very lucky to Buckinghamshire is in part of my patch. And I also work closely with Surrey Green Social Prescribing Team. So Surrey was one of the test and learn sites, Surrey Heartlands, for green social prescribing, and the government did a 2-year pilot, and there were 7 sites around the UK, and I've been working with the Surrey team because they were one of the pilots. So I've learned a lot about GSP from them. So this evening I'm going to cover briefly the need for nature to be incorporated in our health planning, what prescribing nature is. So we're looking at green social prescribing. There's also blue social prescribing, but mostly we just refer to it as GSP, green social prescribing. But there is blue, so like cold water swimming. We'll look a bit at the evidence of the benefits of nature. And then I'll give you an example of sort of GSP in practice. And we'll finish with a bit of inspiration, hopefully. So the first thing, if you'd mind moving on to the next slide, I just wanted to talk about the need. I'm sure all of you are very well aware of this sort of need, but I just want to give you a few statistics. So every year in the UK, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem of some kind, which is a really dramatic statistic. And despite the significant increase in the availability of mental health treatment services in the last 2 decades, close to 2/3 of people with a common mental health problem are not being treated or getting the treatment they need. For many people, it's a multitude of factors that is impacting their mental health. And obviously social factors like poverty, housing, social isolation, can contribute to mental health problems. But we also know that there are particular groups who have a higher prevalence of mental health issues. And those can be ethnic minority groups, refugees and asylum seekers, people with learning disabilities, the LGBTQ community, carers, and the list goes on. We also know that men have the highest suicide rates now, particularly those aged 50 to 54. And then physically, you know, we all know that a lot of us have been struggling with high blood pressure and associated symptoms, respiratory problems, diabetes, obesity, and long COVID, and obviously cancer, to name such a few. So that's on the people side. On the nature side, sadly, nature's struggling too. So the stats are England is one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. So we actually rank 228 out of 241 countries. We're in the bottom. And currently, 38% of people in England do not have access to green or blue spaces within 15 minutes of where they live. So it is a huge issue. And in order for us to support wildlife and people, we have to bring them together. I think we have to create a natural environment that supports both of us. I have the next slide, please. Okay, so the good news is we can prescribe nature, and nature on prescription is a new idea. It's this idea that you would actually be prescribed a nature activity maybe through your GP. Most GP surgeries, or at least primary care networks, a group of GP surgeries, will have a social prescriber or a link worker associated with them. And they can be the person that sort of finds the activities for patients that have been referred. But people can self-refer, or they might be referred from CAMS or hospitals. But what they're referred into can be very different. So we've obviously got Loretta there with a community garden. That's a very common sort of referral for people to go to, because it's so brilliant. It's a community, it's people being together, but also they're getting physically active, they're feeling the soil, they're having, you know, good food probably to eat. So it ticks so many boxes, but there are very different ones. So I mentioned cold water swimming. There's a picture here. The picture in the middle is an amazing project out of the Surrey GSP pilot, where people in care homes were given VR headsets and they were shown films where it was sort of places that they recognized, places that they used to know, like, you know, a walk past an old primary school or something like that. And what happened is it invoked all those memories and those conversations, and it was a real success. So it shows how VR can actually be used for people who might not be able to actually go out and access green space. It's one very heartwarming story. I heard a gentleman who'd lost the use of his legs, and he did a VR where he was on, you know, was taken as if he was on a walk. And he said, I never thought I'd get the sense of being able to walk again. So, you know, it can be really powerful. And then my very favorites, the other one there with the sheep, that was where young people from different communities were invited to access nature, but also to see if they could do like first step volunteering, so learn how they could sort of volunteer. And one of the activities was sheep MOTs. So they learned how to check sheep and see if they were okay. And they learned how to flip a sheep. And it was one of the most popular activities that people signed up for. So it can be, prescribing nature can be very different. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the evidence for this working, we have to know it works, don't we? And I think the Wildlife Trust did some research on this, and really, really interesting. So they discovered that implementing nature-based health and well-being programs could lead to a potential annual savings of 635 million a year in the NHS, which is just amazing. So what's interesting, though, is although we know that nature is good for people's mental and physical health, what really improves it is their nature connectedness. So that's like it's not just spending time in nature, it's the quality of that time in nature that matters. So we need rich and meaningful moments in nature. And the research has shown that effective ways of increasing that nature connectedness are simple everyday practices that encourage noticing and appreciating. So listening to birdsong, pausing to look at a beautiful tree, taking photos of wildlife, those sort of activities of engagement make a big difference. And the University of Derby has done lots of studies on this, and they've come up with 5 pathways to nature connection. So using the senses, beauty, emotion, meaning, and compassion, you know, helping and caring for nature. And what they've discovered is the more connected people are to nature, the more pro-environmental they become. They see that link between the two. But it's important that we recognize that nature has ingredients that are good for our health. So just briefly, there are the sounds of nature have a huge effect on our well-being. So they have discovered that, for instance, birdsong will reduce our blood pressure and make us relaxed. And what's really important is to realize that we are mammals. And obviously deep inside, we recognize that birds only sing when it's safe, when there's no predators around. So we obviously feel that safety too. The soothing sounds of water. Lily and I were talking about it while you were in the breakout rooms, that the tinkly sound of running water, we love that sound. But for us as mammals, it also means there's safe drinking water around. You know, we gravitate to running water. The fractal patterns of nature, like the soft edges of nature, you know, the soft edges of leaves, the clouds, the lovely patterns of trees. Again, we react to that as well. And a nanoparticle physicist called Richard Taylor found that people recovered from stress 60% better when they were viewing computer images of nature. So they didn't actually have to be in nature to get the benefit of those images. But being in nature also, we get the chemical release from all the trees and the plants, and these scents that the trees release, phytoncides, I always find it difficult to say that word, those chemicals actually increase our natural killer cells. So it increases our autoimmunity. It reduces our stress hormones. It promotes sleep. So we are linked and meant to be in the environment of nature. But you know, there is something for me. I always think it's better if we just have some evidence from children. So that picture of all the children, that is it's called Tribe Alternative Stage School, and they go out in woodlands, the children, and they sort of act, do drama, do singing, do creative work, but it's all outside. And here's a quote from a 9-year-old boy from Southampton who had not experienced, he had a day at half term that we funded for him to go out and be with Tribe in the woods for a day. And he said this: "Here we get to enjoy ourselves around nature, because in the cities, there's not like any trees or like any natural things, and they're all buildings and it's bad pollution. But here it's great to hear the birds sing and the animals breathing if you're very, very quiet." I just love it. I mean, absolutely beautiful, isn't it? And it was amazing. I went and saw some of the children from Tribe, and just to see the effect for them of being outdoors and free, you know, it was just beautiful. Can I have the next slide, please? So I wanted to give you a really good example of green social prescribing in action. So this comes from the Surrey pilot, and this is St Ebba's Hospital. And St Ebba's Hospital works with a lot of young people who have mental health conditions, and they decided to create a therapy garden for the young people to have their meetings and have their therapy outdoors, not in a room with 4 magnolia walls. Now, the Green Social Prescribing Toolkit recommends that you bring people from across local communities, local government, health and social care, it's a long list, voluntary and community organisations, the environmental sector, and people with lived experience of mental ill health to set out a vision for how you achieve green social prescribing. Well, goodness me, they achieved it here. So the young people in the corner with the chap with the saw where they're building, they were some of the patients that were referred to the project, but some of them couldn't get work. So they learnt alongside Volunteer It Yourself, which is a charity, to construct the garden. They built all the raised beds, they built all the benches, the pagoda, and 8 of them got their city and guilds through the project. So they're actually building their own therapeutic space and getting their city and guilds. And then the people in the middle, they're another charity called Surrey Choices, where they are people with learning difficulties, and they learn horticultural skills towards leading an independent life. And they helped us with all the planting. So they're also maintaining the garden. And then we got Surrey Wildlife Trust involved, and we planted, there's a beautiful sort of hedge that's beginning to sprout and look amazing all around the garden now. And we had supports from the Muslim community who came out and helped put in all the hedging. But also it was great to be part of Surrey Wildlife Trust's heritage hedge laying. So that was another way of getting an environmental group together. We planted lots and lots of plants for pollinators as well. So it just goes to show how you can bring lots of different elements into creating a project. And now the staff have been trained in nature therapies, so they're also having it as their staff wellbeing place. So it's worked really well. Okay, last slide then. Oh no, next slide, please. Sorry, Lily. Oh no, it is the last slide. Okay, just to say, I do a monthly newsletter and my email is right on the top. And my monthly newsletter has a list of all the funding available for the Southeast, and I update it every month for you. So if you would like to join the mailing list, just drop me an email and I'll add you on. But I also cover lots and lots of articles and stuff and resources for you about green social prescribing, about evaluating projects that you're doing, all sorts of things. So hopefully you'll find that useful. And I just want to end with that picture with the guy gardening. So my previous role was working with people at end of life, and that chap is a volunteer, lovely man. And there used to be, this is the, behind where his shoe is where the back entrance to the hospice is. So this is where the ambulance would come and somebody would go in the back door into the hospice. And it used to just be concrete and fencing. And he decided to lift up some of the pavings and plant all those flowers. And 2 weeks after he did it, one of the ambulance men told me that they had driven up with an elderly lady who was very poorly in the back of the ambulance. And as she was brought out, she said, "Oh, look at the flowers. Look at this." She said, "I was so worried about coming here, but now I know I'm safe because I know that there's love here, because someone's taken the trouble to make a garden." And I think for me, it's one of the best anecdotes for how important it is for us as people to have nature and beauty around us. Thank you.